All right. To end, we will talk about some delivery tips and then types of delivery. So, start with Mizzo delivery tips. My first tip is you are not a TV. Have you noticed your TV doesn't care about you? Now, this is a bit different now that we've got streaming. You can pause your TV, but let me tell you, if you're watching live TV, your TV doesn't give a crap about you. You're like, "Hey, TV, I have to go pee." And your TV's like, "I don't care. Go pee then, but I'm not stopping," right? Your TV just keeps going. Sometimes speakers, they get in this mode where they're like transmitting sound and data. That's what a TV does, but you're not a TV. You are a live performer. You can adjust based on your audience. Your TV doesn't look at you and care about you. Whereas us as speakers, we want to think about how how we can adjust, or do we need to react or respond to the audience? If the audience is giving us a confused face, do we need to repeat a line? If they're looking really overwhelmed, do we need to slow down, right? Like, you get to now. I know some of you are like, Mizzo, I can't even stand up there without freaking out. I'm certainly not going to be looking at my audience and thinking about that stuff when I'm trying to give my speech. That may be right now, and that is totally fine. But eventually, you will be able to adapt and converse with the audience. In many ways, I think of public speaking as a conversation because the audience is thinking through their responses in their head. You just can't necessarily hear them. Um, so you're not a TV. You're also not a train. Trains have two options. They can go forward, chugga chugga chugga. They can go backwards, chugga chugga, or they can tip over, right? And that third option is not really an option because then that's bad, right? So a lot of times people will just go and it's like chugga 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 chugga. Here's my speech. Here's my speech. Here we go. And then if they mess up, it's like they freeze and then they're like, "Can I start over?" And it's like, of course you can't start over. You can't like Men in Black mind erase us. You can certainly repeat yourself. You could go back to the beginning, but you can't like magically start over. Do you see what I'm saying? So you're not a train. If anything, you're on a hike and you're moving about, and sometimes you may go off the path. Pick some berries, see a nice view. Sometimes if you mess up, it might be even better than what you planned. And then eventually come back to the path, right? We've talked about Dora, right? When Dora gets thrown off from the plan, and Swiper comes a swiping, she doesn't say like, "Can I go start over? Can I go back to the beginning?" No, she deals with it and figures it out, and that comes back to what she's doing. So you're not a train. You're not going to tip over. You've got a lot more options than just going or freezing or trying to go backwards, right? You can move about. Like, you're the one that knows your speech. Your audience doesn't know your speech. You can, adapt based on how it's going. And, mess ups are just constructions, right? If you mess up, just either keep going or use the mess up to explain something, right? Um, if you're going to use a metaphor, the tour guide is the one I like. Be a tour guide. Guide people through your information, right? You're not going to throw them in the bus, slam on the gas and be like, "Hold on, here we go. This is the sights." Woo, right? Like, no, you're going to ease through it. You're going to make sure to point out like signposts, look to your right. On your right, you'll see my first point. You're going to preview what's coming, right? You're going to take us through this. Um, I like to think of like being taken on vacation by the speaker. And finally, you want to make sure you're yourself. Um, Notice on your videos when we record, do you sound like a robot, right? Do you sound like a speaker voice? That's okay, but eventually you want to start and sound like you. Not everybody is going to give speeches like me because they're not like me. You want to give speeches like you. What are the things that you do that are funny or interesting? Can you slip in your type of humor? Can you be using your body to make people comfortable? If your vocal tone's very high, does that work to your advantage to make people feel safe and comfortable? If your vocal tone is very low, does that make does that make your audience feel a certain way? Whatever it is you have, you don't have to change or sound like a robot giving a speech, right? You want to really embrace that and do it your way. And then finally, one of the best tips for delivery is just to practice. We really don't understand this. We will spend so much time putting together a speech, writing a speech, crafting a speech, and then we won't say it out loud. And that is so silly. That would be like practicing running in your head. You got to go run. You got to go train. Find a mirror, find a bedroom, go in the bathroom, practice in the shower, right? Like you want to practice so that you are able to control your vocalics, so that you know how the movements of your body work. So often people will say to me, I'm not a good public speaker. And I will say, I'm not a good downhill skier. And they're always like, "Oh, do you downhill ski?" No, I don't. That's why I'm bad at it, right? Like, if you don't practice speaking, you're not going to be very good at it. So there are my delivery tips. We've talked about these, but I just want to make sure you know them. Um, my favorite, right, is extemporaneous speaking, and that's what we're doing in class, which is speaking from limited notes. And you can do that a bunch of different ways. This is the happy medium, right? This is where you're writing notes down, but you're not writing everything word for word. Whereas if you speak from a manuscript, you're writing word for word. Presidents often do this. Obama has a lot of examples of this. Um, I did this for my dad's eulogy when my dad died. I didn't trust myself to remember everything in that moment, so I wrote a manuscript. It's one of the few times I have spoken directly from a manuscript. Um, you can also memorize, but I don't recommend them. There are very few times you will speak from memory. Though sometimes we know something so well, like if you, let's say you do a call script or you do a tour, a lot of times you'll memorize what you say and then that ends up becoming from memory. Um, Even though that can sometimes blend into extemporaneous if you're ad-libbing. And then finally, impromptu speaking. I think we sometimes think this is just like speaking off the cuff, but it's not. Impromptu speaking is speaking from experience or memory. So anytime you've ever said, "Oh yeah, there's this movie," and then you use the movie as an example to prove your point, or you use a theory that you know to prove your point, right? Anytime somebody asks you a question, I find myself in bars or at family events, and someone will say, "Can you explain to me why?" And then they'll ask me some, controversial question like, why is everyone gay, right? So, or why do people why I've heard about these kids who, were born girls and they want to be boys. What's that all about? So when I developed that answer, like I'm speaking from years of studying gender, like that's impromptu speaking. Or when somebody asks you, how's your new job going? Like you already know that answer. You're not making it up, right? You're speaking from experience and like reflection. So those are the different types of delivery. And while I have my favorites, I really believe that your type of delivery should match your situation. So thinking about what type of speaking you're doing, what's your goal, and what's your point. If every word really matters, if you're like introducing new legislation or you're trying to talk about a really complicated article or a really complicated argument, you're going to want to use a manuscript. Um, if you're doing something, like I said, like a tour, right? That's something that you may want to memorize. Though memory, uh, I think, is the most risky out of all of them because if you forget, make sure you back up with like extemporaneous speaking, and you can kind of go back and forth between those. I love extemporaneous speaking, and I just explained impromptu speaking. All of these have their time and place, right? So while I certainly have my favorites, it's not like one is bad and the others, one is good and the others are bad or anything like that. So there you have it. There's delivery. Woohoo! Tune in next time for Persuasion Nation.